Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hi kids, and welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the second look set of the podcast, the show where we go back to that blockbuster new release wall in your memory, grab a copy off the shelf, put it in the old VCR, and see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Howdy, numbskulls.
And we're here to help you navigate all those landmines littered down memory lane. Mike, how you been, man? It's been a while.
Oh, I've been doing great. Just chugging along and watching old movies. It's great.
Well, wow, what a great concept.
I know it's a novel idea. I know.
Yeah, maybe somebody should do a podcast about that crap. So we're excited, like most of the country this week. Like the country's got dino fever, you know.
Oh yes, dino.
It's just really taken over. So we're getting excited for the upcoming release of Jurassic Park's something or Jurassic World something or other coming up here soon. The second sequel to the reboot of the franchise from the original Jurassic Park. So we thought it'd be fun to kind of go back and look at, from a grumpy nostalgia standpoint, the original Jurassic Park trilogy, and more particularly the Lost World Jurassic Park, the first sequel, if you will. What I thought was interesting about this movie, Mike, is the concept of sequels in general. I don't know if it's just me or sequels have been around forever, right? But it seems like back in our day, as they say, you kind of had to earn a sequel. Like now, if a movie makes like $18 at the box office, it's like, oh, well, let's greenlight a sequel. But back then, it kind of had to be earned, you know. And
there had to be some success, let's say, at the box office.
To,
justify our studio saying, okay, you can do another one.
Well, the justification part is something I find kind of interesting. So there's really kind of two types of sequels. There's the one that's got like a real narrative choice that, helps progress a story or flesh out characters, like Godfather 2 comes to mind. That always is like a commonly raised one. I think Aliens is a good example. There's more there to the subject, I think those are like legit fun sequels. But more often is the case is the alternative, Mike, which is the cash grab. Let's say. That's where they kind of manufacture a plot to kind of match some intellectual property they want to kind of slap, title on and kind of resell it. And so, I'm thinking like Home Alone 2 is a good example. Like the original premise is really pretty stretched in the first place, right? So, little Macaulay takes the nation by storm. People love him. And they said, well, you know what? We got to do this again. So what do? He gets left alone in a New York building again. He miraculously meets up with the same two burglars again. It's just one of those things where they kind of shoehorn a plot to fit, fit the narrative, So there's a lot of sequels do that.
Yes.
So Mike, I know. Speaking of sequels, I know what your favorite sequel is. It's same as mine, like Problem Child 2, right? But
yes.
What's your least favorite sequel? Since we're on the subject.
When you said a Problem Child 2, I'm reminded of a review I read at the time that said that movie should be shown. That movie should be projected on a diaper. And that was the gist of the review. So I love that one. Let me go on a little, not a rant, but I got to thinking about sequels, and you already mentioned two great ones, Godfather 2 and Aliens. It's amazing the sequels that you find that are actually better than the original. We just watched one a few weeks ago, Superman 2, which comes to mind. And most people, when they think the Superman franchise, the Superman movie was good and established the character, but when you bring in Zod and his gang of goons, and it's even more of a kind of a thrilling picture than the first one. So
yeah, you got something going on.
Yeah, and then I started thinking, there was Rocky 2 was considered by some to be as good as Rocky, or you can't see it, but I have a Star Trek 2 Wrath of Khan poster, which blows away the first one. If anybody saw the first Star Trek movie, they probably are still snoozing. But
very.
Then I started thinking a little bit more. Okay, but these are all drama, action, sci-fi movies. What about what movies are really bad and never come off as sequels? And this one's the one that I went down a rabbit hole so deep. I thought the worst sequels are comedies. Okay, and then I thought,
Oh yeah.
what comedies actually were okay as a sequel, or maybe equal the first, or maybe better? And I thought for a long, long, long time, and I came up with two. um,
Be brave, Mike. Be brave.
Airplane Two, I would say is almost at the level of Airplane, almost. And my second choice would
Yeah.
be Any Which Way You Can with Clint Eastwood, was almost, or if not better, than Every Which Way But Loose.
Probably
Now,
my favorite orangutan movie ever.
of course, right turn, Clyde. But
Clyde.
but this is an open challenge to our audience. I want them to email us and think of a comedy that had a sequel that was better than the original or equal to it. So, and then
That's
yeah, and and you were kind of defining sequels. I was thinking you had the immediate cash grabs, like the ones we see that are the
yeah.
Jurassic Park series or Terminator. Well, not Terminator as much as like
Oh,
Friday 13th kind of movies.
Terminator. Jesus, Terminator's in. There's like 20 of those.
Yeah,
They're all
yeah.
terrible.
And,
Yeah.
But that brings me to another kind of sequel, the delayed sequel, or the totally unnecessary sequel. And bear with me on this.
Uh-huh.
I thought of a few of these too. These are sequels that not really like came out a couple of years after. We're talking years later. 2010 came to mind. Why would this movie was made? It's not a bad movie. I remember watching it when on
Nope.
HBO in the 80s. Not a bad movie, but why was it made? Why was it made
Yeah.
15 years plus after the original? Um,
Yeah.
Blade Runner. They just came out with a Blade Runner movie that was 2049.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay, but why? Why was it made?
Yeah.
Indiana Jones, not the first three, but the Shia LaBeouf, disaster.
Yeah. You beat me to it. That was my single list. That one was just
Yeah,
wow.
but you have Independence Day, which we did the original for a while back, and then that second one was just excrement.
Ugh.
Just literally, just I was like, why am I watching this? But then you have the Top Gun movie that just came out. Think, okay, I haven't seen it yet. I've heard it's pretty good, but I don't know
Yeah.
how much it apes the original movie from '86, but that one's been a huge success. And like I say, I have to the jury's out on that one for me. I've seen good reviews for it, but delayed by what? What's that? 35 years, 36 years. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
And then we have the Avatar movie coming out, which you would know better now when the first one came out, but that's a long time between, I guess, not only
Yeah.
a
That's
sequel, but movie after that and after that. So
I want to say that's 2000 or 2010. Those came out, and then so he waited like 12 years to do the next three movies. So yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah. That's interesting.
that's a
Yeah.
long-winded answer to come back to your original question. Let's circle back and say the worst sequel
What?
was Matrix 2. And
Oh.
I say this because you watch the Matrix first movie, and it's a complete movie. It has a beginning, it has an end,
Mhm.
arcs. Obviously you could see they ended it with him like taking on a bigger project. But then when you
Right.
actually watch the Matrix 2, you're excited. Wow, what's he going to do now? He can fly. And you watch it, and you're like, oh my god, the dialogue, the exposition. And that was
Oh.
it wasn't the worst movie like Meatballs 2 or Caddyshack 2, but it was disappointing. I would say it was the most disappointing sequel I've ever seen. And I
Yeah. I
didn't know
remember
that.
us going.
Yeah, I remember you and I
I
saw
remember.
that together.
Yeah. I remember like just agonizing in my chair. Like I didn't understand anything that was going on. And I just remember there's some old guy in a white beard that in the third act had just talked where they should have the action conclusion was sitting there talking for 20 minutes. And I'm like,
Yeah,
it was just a haze. And I said, you know what? Okay. They had a good concept here, but
right,
but I
right.
think that's the trap. And I think that kind of circles back to our original point. I think that's the trap that these sequels kind of fall into is like when you push a concept farther than it kind of organically should be grown, you get in a lot of traps, and one of them is the plot hole syndrome, which I'm going to call. And well, let's kind of circle the wagons a little bit. Go back to our original movie here. So, this movie here has probably some of the biggest holy grails of plot holes ever, and I think it's just a. Well, we'll get into it, but there's some inexcusable ones, and we talked about this in the past. I'm willing to suspend disbelief on a lot of stuff because I don't want to be one of those guys that's picks apart a movie. But when you can't overcome it at some point to the point where it's like, come on, guys,
Yeah.
did anybody read the script at all? So, all right, so so that's how we set the stage there, Mike. So let's get into a little bit more detail. So
How was
so
how was Spielberg behind this? I know he did Temple of Doom and Indiana Jones movie, but that was
well,
okay. But how did he get his name on this one?
well, we'll get to that. So,
Okay. Sorry, I'm
so
getting ahead of.
yeah, so let's go back to this wonderful year of 1997, Mike. Remember what was going on in '97? We had Bill Clinton was our president. Our economy was booming with the .com boom, albeit falsely. George Clooney was the sexiest man alive, of course.
Of course.
The Spice Girls and Hanson dominated the music charts. So,
Mbop.
we were on to something good there. Mbop. And some guy named Steve Jobs decided to come back to his failed company, Apple, and try to start back up again. So, to some degree of success, right? So, but the other thing about 1997 was there was a sequel fever. Mike was in the air. We had just come off the CGI explosion that was created by the original Jurassic Park in 1993. And then word got around that there would be a sequel to this. And when I say word, I mean actually word. There was no Reddit forums or message boards and hardly an internet at the time to really talk about these things. And you had to read these things in the paper or Entertainment Weekly or something like that. So I learned of this movie's existence through an article in Entertainment Weekly, which seems just unbelievably weird. But yeah, so the country was psyched for some sequels, so they had this was one that was coming up. I also had Speed 2 and Batman and Robin coming up this summer, Mike. So
No! Don't get me started on Batman and Robin. Okay,
easy, big boy. But yeah, so we were really excited about this next movie. More dinos, Mike. More dinos. So this movie was released on May 23rd, 1997. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, who this was his first movie after about a 4 or 5 year hiatus. He had done the original Jurassic Park and Schindler's List concurrently. So he would review the dailies in Europe while he was shooting Schindler's List, and that movie carried a little weight to it, so that might have been a little hard to carry all that together. But he eventually decided, you know what, I need to take a break. So he came back 4 or 5 years later to direct this movie. It was written by Michael Crichton, from the original Jurassic Park, and screenwriter David Koepp. And so David Koepp's done hundreds of and he's probably the world's biggest screenwriter in Hollywood. He's most successful, most prolific. This script took 9 drafts.
Oh boy!
Primarily because they changed the entire third act. The end here where the dinosaur goes to San Diego, that wasn't in the original script, but they felt they had to tack it in there because they didn't plan on Jurassic Park 3 at some point. But they were given a $73 million budget by Universal and went to it and brought back some of the original cast, but some new faces. Mike,
oh boy!
Did you look into the cast at all? Who's in this? Who's in this gem?
I wrote some notes here. Jeff Goldblum. Hey, sadly, not in a white tank top in this movie. Julianne Moore.
I think the sex appeal comes through. So.
Yeah, I think so too. He's such a charming fellow in this movie.
He is a little creepy, but
Julianne Moore, beautiful redhead.
Oh yeah,
might know her from Hannibal, Boogie Nights. I liked her in Big Lebowski. But that's just me. Vince Vaughn, wisecracking fellow that I knew from Swingers, which was probably his best movie, and then he's just kind of gone downhill from then. I'm not sure.
I don't think he's done anything good since then. In fact, I think the only reason he got in this movie was Spielberg had to go on the set one day of Swingers to approve them using some of the John Williams soundtrack, like the Jaws soundtrack. And he met Vince Vaughn there, and he developed this kind of weird man crush on him, and said, "Hey, I'm going to make this movie. I want you to be in it." He actually created this character to put Vince Vaughn in there. So
Oh,
Kind of
wow.
weird, kind of creepy, but
That is.
yeah,
I wonder.
yeah,
I wondered about that connection.
yeah,
Had the guy from The West Wing, who I cannot remember his name. That's what I knew him from. That's your group of 4 good guys. I'm going to put that in air
yeah,
quotes. I have something to say about Mr. Vaughn later.
yeah.
And then we have our baddies. Pete Post. I can never pronounce his name. He's a brilliant English actor. Was a brilliant English actor. Postlethwaite.
Pos- Postlethwaite.
Postlethwaite. Okay, cool.
You can't get more English than that.
Yes, I've never heard it said actually. I knew.
How great was that guy?
I
That
know.
guy was the standalone actor in this movie.
Yeah, he for me, if he was in this movie, wow.
Yeah,
We're, we're
yeah.
we're talking
Panic button.
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey levels of sequel. Um,
nice,
but
nice
I knew
pull.
Pete. I knew from Usual Suspects. He was the Kobayashi's lawyer, and then another role which
Oh yeah,
I found fantastic.
yeah.
Arliss Howard. He was our main baddie in this movie. I knew him as Cowboy from Full Metal Jacket.
Great
Also,
actor. Yeah.
I remember him as being, I think he still is Mr. Deborah Winger, but I have to
That's
see.
correct.
I have to
Yeah.
see- oh, good. Okay. Another guy, I can never pronounce his name, Peter Stormare.
There you go. That's
He
right.
always does a lot of weird roles. He was in Fargo, obviously.
The
He was
he's
Carl
the nihilist.
He was Carl Hungus, the nihilist from Big Lebowski. There you
The
go.
nihilist.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then,
Well versed with the wood chipper.
yes, very well. And then you had lots of faces that were dinosaur food from from the bad guy
Yep.
section, and a brief cameo from the kids from the original Jurassic Park, and a John Hammond
Yeah.
appearance too. Which
They did a great misdirect there. So
yes,
they think you're going to put these
like,
kids back in the movie, and then
yeah, I was already. No,
they give you a little reprieve. Yeah, they give you like a little reprieve, like, hey, there's not going to be any annoying kids in this movie, and then boy, they just kind of
Oh yeah, they
pull the old,
turned it up to 11.
switcheroo.
Yes, but that's your cast. That's your guy.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. So I remember the first time I saw this film. I didn't see it opening day because they did the midnight showings. But the next day, a Friday afternoon, I convinced a bunch of the engineers I work with to play hooky. And the boss caught us. He says, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "We're going to go see, we're going to go see the dinosaurs." That's what everybody called it. We're going to go see the dinosaurs. And we thought we were kind of in trouble. He goes, "Well, hey, I'll drive." And so that pretty much took, care of that. But I saw it with a bunch of bros, and the theater was packed, and the everybody. There was a great dynamic, and it was a big fun day. I think part of it was fun because we were skipping work, But I had read this book, the Lost World book, about 2 weeks earlier. Again, the same reason I was thumbing through Entertainment Weekly, and I saw, wait, there's a new novel. So I went out to my local Target, bought a hardback, and read it like 3 days. And but yeah, I was psyched to see this. I've always been since I was a little kid. It's like most kids, dinosaurs kind of ran my life. So to see, I was still visibly shook by the first appearance of those dinosaurs, that midnight show of Jurassic Park that I saw 4 years later, and the audible gasp, the hushed gasp the audience let out when they saw that first dinosaur. I was kind of hooked. So, I was all in at that point. But Mike, you remember the first time you saw this movie?
I saw a movie about dinosaurs too, called Still Magnolias. Thank you.
Oh, tell me how it hurts.
I know. Sorry about that, folks. I have no idea where and when I saw this movie, except for the fact that my wife said we saw it at a theater. I had no memory of this movie. I remember watching the first Jurassic Park movie and being excited about it and seeing that, and we loved it. Almost like you said, it was almost like you wanted to applaud at the end of it. But this movie, until I watched it, this time, I was like, wow, that happened. That happened. I had no memory.
It really hit home. Really hit home.
Really. You can tell it really made a big impression with me.
All right, well, let's go through it again for the folks at home, and so they may be a little rusty on it too. Maybe we can kind of flesh out what we were thinking or what you weren't thinking. So if everybody's ready, turn down your lights if applicable, and Mike, hit the button. So the movie kind of fades into. We open on this beautiful tropical beach, and we see this kind of affluent English family on a yacht cruise. And they kind of like parked onto this deserted island to to have lunch, Mike. And the Cabana boys are out there cooking and all that kind of thing, and they've got a little girl with them, played by a very young Camilla Rowe, who grew up to be an actress of some sort.
Yeah.
I don't know.
She's
She's not ugly, that's sure, but she decides she wants to kind of explore the island, so her parents kind of irresponsibly kind of let her wander off, armed only with her roast beef sandwich. So she's walking around the island, and she sees this little creature in the bush, kind of rustling, and she runs out to see it. She thinks it's a bird, and of course it comes out as this little green. I think it's called a compsognathus, Mike. A compy, little green cat-sized dinosaur that she gives a piece of her sandwich to, and then the next thing you know, there's like 30 of them that come out of the weeds and kind of attack her, and she starts screaming, and those screams send her parents and the ship's crew running and screaming. And then the mother comes around and she sees what's going down. She's the little girl getting attacked, and she lets out this horrible open mouth scream, and then this really weird transition where that open mouth scream fades into the open mouth yawn by Jeff Goldblum, looking right into the camera, by the way, which is kind of creepy. He's in a New York subway in his pre-hipster leather, looking cool, and so they kind of set the tone for what Spielberg's willing to allow for violence in this movie already, right?
It's that beach scene. Isn't that from the first book? Isn't that from Jurassic Park? And that's
that's a great segue, Mike. Yeah, it was actually lifted from the Jurassic Park novel. The first chapter is this little girl getting attacked on the beach, and then her parents take her to the emergency room, and the hospital there, and they find out that in kind of a dark turn, this has been happening a lot on this Costa Rican island, and in fact, to the point where newborn babies are getting snatched out of the maternity ward.
Yeah. Okay.
So it goes pretty dark. So Crichton's novels are more they're not adventures. They're really kind of technical and like data-driven things about cautionary tales and
right.
the impact of messing with things you don't know scientifically. But yeah, much different tone.
Yeah, but like you say, Spielberg kind of sets the horror tone early on this one.
Spielberg's got no issues about killing kids or animals or dogs. He yeah, and those things kind of resonate. So I mean, I guess that works. But let's get back to Mr. Goldblum. So he's down in the subway, and he's he's catching a ride, and it comes to find out that given the events of the park, the last years of the kind of been discredited in his community. He's lost his tenure at I think it was Texas University. He was a teacher, so he's just kind of down and out on his luck. And it turns out he's been summoned to talk to John Hammond. So he kind of makes his way to this large estate, and he walks in. He's met by Mr. Pitt, Mike. The butler is played by the actor that played Mr. Pitt.
That's right.
Yes.
Louise Dreyfus,
the bane of her existence. Yeah. So he he goes up to meet Hammond upstairs, and before he gets there, he's kind of met with these the board of directors from the company that Hammond ran called InGen, who's on the verge of Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and the board of directors, it turns out, has kind of pushed John Hammond out, and they're led by his snotty little nephew, played by Arliss Howard.
I mean, can you make a villain any more like overt? I mean, like it's instant. It's like, okay, fake English accent. Yeah. Snotty.
Yeah.
His clothes are worth more than your education. Yeah. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah. So he's got an axe to grind against Mr. Goldblum, of course, because he violated his non-disclosure. So these two have a kind of running rivalry through the whole movie. So Jeff Goldblum does not like this guy. This square bugs him, Mike. Bugs him a lot. Yeah. So that careful. This suit costs more than your education. That's a very British burn. That's a good one. But yes, so he makes his way up to talk to Hammonds, who's kind of bedridden at this point, and Hammond's kind of looking for some redemption, and here's where the plot hole premises start to really kind of fly. Sir Richard Attenborough is playing John Hammond, and again in this one, and he proceeds to tell Jeff Goldblum that hey, guess what? There's a secret extra park that they, like a factory that they created all the dinosaurs, called Isla Sorna, And the Isla Nublar location from the previous movie was just kind of like the showroom where they put all the finished products. So I was like, okay,
Time out.
yeah,
Time out. Goldblum's reaction to this was like,
it's our
"Wow,
reaction.
no shit." And it's like that's why I wrote down. It's like Jeff Goldblum was like the audience.
So
it's like, "Wow,
yeah, his little
you're kidding."
his little summation of what he's just heard is what I said. 25 years later, like okay, but as it turns out that there was a hurricane that wiped out this island 5 years ago, and for some reason all the animals were survived. They abandoned the site, but all the animals were set loose, and they're still going. And I'm thinking like they don't explain that at all. They're still surviving. So, and I thought immediately of the meme that all the Star Wars haters have used now about somehow Palpatine returned. To explain how the Emperor came back in the ninth movie. Somehow it's good enough. Shut your mouth and go buy a ticket, you jerk. But yeah, so the plot device is kind of thin, but so he decides that as this scene kind of grinds on for the exposition of it, he wants to send a small team onto the island to kind of document all these animals and kind of show them to the public, and he hopes that public sympathy will help the court of opinion and kind of save and turn this island into a natural habitat and not be exploited for this Jurassic Park San Diego project that InGen's trying to do to save the company. So in order to do that, he hires Vince Vaughn, who's a videographer, this guy Eddie, who's a field weapons expert, played by, I think his last name is Schiff. I can't remember, but he's your West Wing.
Like I said, just
great actor. Everything
West
he
Wing
does
guy.
is great. But then.
Yeah.
As it turns out, it's Jeff Goldblum's girlfriend, Sarah Harding, who I'm a degreed zoologist, Mike. So I can claim this. She is probably the worst scientist I've ever seen on film.
Wait. I'm going to go Terry Hatcher as a nuclear physicist.
Okay,
on one of those James Bond movies.
All right, close second.
I'm going to put that in there.
Close second.
This might be a close second.
And we'll get to why here as we start to explore the plot holes. But yeah, so he's infuriated that she's on the island already. So he decides, well, I'll go. He kind of leverages Jeff Goldblum to go by using his girlfriend as bait. So so the scene is set. So these four guys are going to go on the island, take pictures of the dinos, and then come back and show the world. And that, yeah, okay, you still with me? All right. So the next scene is kind of them going to I don't know where they transition to, but they're in this garage getting all this stuff together, and Eddie's garage. And the cast of characters, and we get introduced to Jeff Goldblum's daughter, and this is where it kind of really goes off the rails. So for some reason, she's invited to this thing only to be told that she can't come. He kind of pawns her off. So, and it's typical trope. Mike, you've got a daughter, I got to think that Hollywood's portrayal of young daughters are probably a little unfair. Is every teenage girl a horrible head case that hates the entire world?
Yes,
yes,
of course.
But of course,
you're right.
So she's got issues with Jeff and his lifestyle, and he says, "Well, yeah, if you want advice, don't listen to me." So for some reason, she just kind of disappears, Mike. I'll get to that in a minute because this is where the plot holes start kicking in. So we get a little more exposition here, and then they start sailing their way to the island. And so when they land, they start looking for Sarah because Sarah got there a few days earlier, and of course Sarah's out there, totally out in the open, and they're kind of watching this family of stegosaurs, Mike. And the stegosaurs are there because the kids complained that was their favorite dinosaur, and the screenwriters took heed to that because they weren't in the original one. So she's out there, and of course she's preaching about how you interact, you only observation, no interaction. So she starts interacting with the dinosaurs right away, and they have this brief little thing where they kind of attack her, but it's okay. They all go away. And then in the middle of this, as they're all kind of laughing and Goldblum's trying to convince her to get off that island to no avail, they see a fire from their original campsite. So they run back there. And then, of course, they see Jeff Goldblum's daughter cooking dinner because she's stowed away. And so
Was she, was she, was she on the same U-boat with Indiana Jones on the
Yes.
way to the island?
So my question here is, hey Jeff, do you not see your daughter off at any point and say okay? So anyway, now we're yeah.
No one notices
So
her.
now we're
No
stuck.
one notices
Now we're
all this.
stuck with this
Oh
kid.
my god!
So as she's getting in trouble, they start to see that the InGen team starts to land on the island at the same time. They're just they kind of go X Games here at this point, Mike. There's like a 25 Evil Knievels come out, and led by the leader of the expedition, the Great White Hunter, played by Pete Postlethwaite so well. So that their goal is to kind of round up, and like they have a little dinosaur rodeo, and they kind of have all these cool gadgets where they, to be fair, the special effects in the scene were really kind of great. I mean, they're really amazing. But
Sure.
they kind of capture and cage up. It's really kind of thrilling sequence. It's about 24 dinosaurs, and it's kind of cool. And then they are the good guys. Their camp sees it. Oh no, we're probably too late. So, and of course, there's a countermeasure for that. This Vince Vaughn turns out to be a bit of an international terrorist, domestic terrorist, and he's been there to kind of sabotage the whole thing. So that night, they've kind of set up a Zoom call with a bunch of investors, and they're pitching. They're showing the animals. Arliss Howard is kind of showing the animals to the investors on the screen and talking about how they're going to start Jurassic Park San Diego. And so and then Vince Vaughn kind of lets all the animals loose and causes havoc and all that kind of thing. So prior to this, after they had all been rounded up, the Pete Postlethwaite decides that he wants to waive his fee and he wants to shoot one of the dinosaurs. He wants to shoot a T-Rex in lieu of a cash payment. And for some reason, I got to assume that this animal is probably worth millions and millions of dollars. I don't think they would probably let somebody just shoot it, but they decide, okay, whatever. So he's staking out the T-Rex nest because the baby's in there, and he's sitting up there with his little buddy RJ. And as during the ruckus of these animals breaking loose, they kind of knock a Jeep 600 feet in the air. One of the little Triceratops kind of headbutts one, and it lands on him. It just causes a real mess, and it's like, oh, here we go, right? And so the T-Rex is loose, and all the animals are loose. And after after Vince Vaughn kind of frees up the dinosaur, he runs into this pit where was getting stalked by Pete Postlethwaite. He sees this little baby T-Rex down there that's got a little broken leg. They were using that little animal to try to bait the T-Rexes so they can shoot them. But they bail out when the Jeep falls on them. But Eddie steals this little baby and runs back to the RVs that they're currently hiding in. And then kind of all hell breaks loose, Mike, because again, the greatest this great field biologist decides that a bloody baby dinosaur being kept in that's the parents won't come looking for that thing at all. But yeah, so that kind of leads to the next kind of set piece where they're in the camper. The good guy team are in the camper trying to get off the island, and then they're kind of fix up they put a little cast, the impromptu cast on the dinosaur, and then mom and dad show up, and they're a little mad, and they push the baby out the door, and they all go back in the woods. They think everything's fine, and of course they come back to settle the score and push the RVs off the cliff. And this is kind of a longer scene than I was expecting to, Mike. And
I actually wrote that down. This was like overly extended, just overly. I don't know if the tension. It's like they had two portions of tension for a 1 gallon scene, and just stretched it out so far. And overlong. I felt that way about a few scenes.
But the end result, the end result is the dinosaurs push the RVs over the ledge, and they're inside, of course, and you get that classic kind of Spielberg type scene where she kind of falls on the glass, and the glass starts to crack. I mean, that was pretty cool. But they end up getting Eddie, the field expert. He ends up saving them, and then he pays quite a price for it because he kind of gets eaten up at the end there. And they end up getting saved by they kind of meet up with the InGen mercenaries kind of meet them at the end. So now they're all in the same boat.
Why was the good guys' base camp on a cliff that was very soft, eroded dirt? Any reason why they were
Mike,
that
again,
high up on a
these
cliff?
are the questions you got to avoid.
Okay, I know. Sorry, I did it again.
Yeah, so the two
Continue,
teams,
guys,
they're obviously shaken. A lot of people have been killed off, so now they decide that they've got to team up if they want to survive. And then, of course, the original facility is in the center of the island, and that's been kind of populated by the predators, Mike. They're fiercely territorial, and they're all in the middle, and that's where they, of course, got to go. That kind of sets up the second act, where they all kind of make their way towards the middle of the island. So this is kind of the
how did Imgen how they make their money? I mean, are they just stupid? They put their base camp in the
again,
okay.
Mike,
Never mind.
All right.
So
the rest of the movie is kind of like the rock climbing scenes, where they just got to make their way through. Tensions are flaring, of course, and they're under the high stress situation, and they kind of take a quick break, and then Mr. Stormare, who had previously kind of zapped one of the little green compies, he goes off to do number 2 in the woods, and he gets kind of lost out in the woods, and he comes across a little clan of these little baddies, and they kind of tear him up, which I thought was kind of a creepy scene. Again, that's another scene that's lifted from the original Jurassic Park novel. That's how John Hammond in the novel Jurassic Park, he wasn't this happy little Santa Claus looking guy. He was kind of a ruthless kind of billionaire, and he met his fate by getting eaten to death by these little green compies in the first book. But so he never comes back, and they say, well, we're getting hunted, we got to keep going. And what really kind of bothered me here, the first really monumental plot hole, is that Sarah, who's spent all her life tracking African predators and sleeping downwind, blah blah blah, she's walking around with a completely blood-soaked backpack on. And to make matters worse, like 2 scenes earlier, like Pete Postlethwaite says, "Hey, are you hurt?" He goes, "No, that's the T-Rex blood." But 2 scenes earlier, she was talking about to that other caricature of Robert Backer, the paleontologist with the red beard and the cowboy hat. She's having an argument with him about how the T-Rex has the biggest olfactory nerve in history, and it could smell things for miles. So I mean, I know she knows. So she just continues to they actually set up camp one night. They sleep, and she's got the they go to enough trouble to like bag up their s'mores and candy bars in a plastic bag as to not have that scent. But she keeps the bloody baby backpack on the tent. And of course the T-Rex shows up at night and takes out like half the village, and I was half the camp, and I was thinking, oh boy, here we go. There's a lot of, I saw a lot of parallels here to the original King Kong, Mike. I don't know if you see that or not, with the music and the music,
a little bit of Skull Island,
the 1933 King Kong. All those guys on that ship were just there to get killed by the creatures on there, and I think that's what all this really was. But it was kind of cool to see all these guys get beat up. So at the last phase, of course the Velociraptors have to come into play at some point, Mike. So as they get close to the village, they kind of split up, and the good guys kind of go into the camp, and the bad guys go through the long grass, which they're told not to do. And you get another great Spielberg shot here is when you see the trails, the overhead shot in the grass, and you see the trails of that was kind of cool. They all kind of get picked off one by one. And that kind of leads to this final little climactic scene on the island, at least, when Jeff Goldblum, his daughter, and Sarah basically play pinball at this camp, and they're getting chased by the Velociraptors. They're getting bounced around. And apparently plate glass doesn't hurt that much, Mike, because they went through about 60 glass plates, each one of them. Yeah,
barely a scratch.
Barely a scratch. But they ended up through a bunch of silly maneuvers, kind of outsmarting these raptors. And meanwhile, Vince Vaughn had gone away and turned on the radio and called for the chopper to get him out of there. So they get off the island, and that's where the movie was kind of supposed to end. But Spielberg said, "Hey, we haven't killed enough things yet," so they tacked on like this new third act. As they're flying back to San Diego, we kind of cut back to the island, and the InGen crew's still there. And it turns out that Pete Postlethwaite had managed to tranquilize the large T-Rex near the nest, and so they've got him in a cage, and they've got the baby along as well. And they think, well, we'll salvage something. We'll bring these two animals back to on an oil cargo ship, just like the original King Kong. So they're bringing that animal back, and then it sets up this big set piece in the third act where we see this ship coming into the harbor, and Jeff Goldblum and Sarah are there to meet it. And the guys in the harbor are scared because the ship's not slowing down, and it just it kind of
nobody runs. They just kind of stand there and stare into the
crash into the dock there, and it does. When,
you have sonar, you have radar. You can see it on the screen. They're not slowing down. Well, get out of there.
That
Stop
doesn't
staring.
even hold a candle to what I'm going to hit you with next. So just hang on, stay in your seat. So.
Oh, I got something too.
What I thought was fun here is that the movie Speed 2, which is another cash grab, horrible sequel that should never have been made. they use the same scene as like their big finale, right? I think at the end of the cruise ship kind of crashes into the harbor, and like this movie totally stole their thunder for just a small little set piece in their movie. But yeah, so the ship crashes into the harbor, and then the rescue crew goes on into the cabin, and they see all the bodies being torn up, like the whole crew has been killed and like mangled and mauled. And okay, Mike, do you want to say it, or you want? Yeah, okay. Do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it?
I'm just going to say it's one of the biggest flaws I can imagine. I don't know if I caught this when I first watched it, but my God, how did the people making this movie miss this? I mean, it's even explicitly stated by one of the people. Were there any other animals in the boat? And the guy says, no, it was just the T-Rex. And the baby had already been secured somewhere else. So it's like there were no other animals.
I mean,
how?
Steve, okay. Come on, you wrote Close Encounters. You co-wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, how did you? So I guess for those that may not be familiar, the people that go on to check the cabin see that people have been like torn apart, and it's a standard OSHA door to get in there. And so the question is to be back, what killed these people? And I guess you're left to understand that this 20-foot tall dinosaur squeezed into this door, chewed up everybody, and then locked itself back into the hold. Or at the very least, this baby about the size of a Great Dane jumped out of this 20-foot deep cabin, walked in there, killed them all, and then jumped back. It's just
Well, that's what he said. The baby was brought in a different way. I don't know if you caught that. The baby had already been secured through a different transportation. So the only animal on the ship was a giant T-Rex that was stored in the cargo hold, being secured by a dead man's hand, literally. And
so 26-year-old me and everybody else in the audience just kind of let that go because we knew we didn't have time to think about how preposterous it was because, next thing you know, this T-Rex is loose in San Diego. So it just kind of runs havoc, running through suburban San Diego, and it kind of runs through the city. You see, there's some silly things. You see of course, you get the Japanese businessmen running. They must flee because it's and then there's a funny scene I caught because I'm a movie geek, but there's a blockbuster video that it kind of breaks into. And one of the cutouts in there is Arnold Schwarzenegger as King Lear, and I think that's kind of a dig.
I like the Tom Hanks and Tsunami Sunrise. I don't even know what that's.
But I think the Arnold thing is a dig to the Last Action Hero, which had the nerve to kind of try to go up against Jurassic Park. Remember they opened on the same weekend, and I think we all know how that turned out, but. So and then interesting, trivia here. One of the guys that's shown trying to get into the blockbuster and then snatched up by the dinosaur. That's the screenwriter David Koepp getting eaten by the T-Rex. Yeah. So, but anyway, so that's
okay.
all that stuff kind of happens, and then it gets to some point where they kind of circle back to the dock, because the T Rex is looking for the baby again, and then, of course the snotty InGen, Hammond's nephew, is trying to get the baby, and of course he doesn't see the giant T Rex sneak up behind him. He takes a bite out of his legs and kind of wounds him so the baby can eat him. So the bad guys always get eaten, like just like in Twister. He died because he was bad, right? So, but as this goes down, the T Rex conveniently jumps back into the cargo hold, and then Sarah Harding shoots it with a dart and kind of tranquilizes it, and Jeff Goldblum kind of slams the old e-stop and puts the thing back in the box. So so I'm sure no lawsuits were filed that night at all. But so the last scene is kind of the crew kind of asleep on the couch, and you see the callback, and then we see the
Callback.
As seen on CNN, Mike, they show footage of the cargo ship sailing back to Isla Sorna, so they can be preserved on the island and never touched again, except for the next sequel. Yeah, and there's a neat little scene here, Mike, that not a lot of people catch, but if you go back and look at the last scene, and kind of a callback to some of his earlier mistakes, you can see Spielberg's reflection in the TV.
Oh my gosh.
Spielberg.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
he actually did direct this movie.
But yeah, so the movie ends, and we kind of see this beautiful little scene with the T-Rex family reunited, and all the other dinosaurs flying around, and of course they see this pterodactyl fly up. So that exactly right. Yeah.
What a good way to end the franchise, hey?
But of course that was the end, and people, of course, there was a rousing cheer in my audience because everybody loved this one. It was fun. It was great. It was a fun movie to watch. But it ended up making $229 million, which is a nice haul. It made $618 million worldwide. Remind you, these are numbers from 25 years ago with inflation being what it was. So these were big movies. It had an opening weekend of 72 million, Mike, which was a record for almost 25 years until I think Harry Potter in 2001 was finally the one that beat it. But yeah, this was a big opening weekend for sure. But the country went crazy for it. It was a lot of fun. It did not win any Oscars. It was that was the year, if you'll remember, that was the year Titanic came to be, and so Titanic did their kind of Oscar sweep and kind of wiped out anybody there. I know, Mike, you're dying to know what was the MTV, right?
MTV.
It sadly,
yes.
Mike, it lost.
Oh no!
Action sequence, it lost. It got beat out by the memorable speedboat chase and Face Off. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
You mean the Velociraptor Gymkhana scene didn't win?
But again, MTV's fingering the pulse of the nation. So, but yeah, so that's gonna sequel or not, this was a juggernaut for sure. So, Mike, I always go first. Let's hear your take on the grumpy scale.
Well, you're gonna have to bear with me here because I got several notes that are kind of haphazardly written on here. Okay, my first note here is you can't have an insufferable prick be the lead, meaning Jeff Goldblum. Maybe he's an action hero, but he's not, as this character, equipped to lead a movie and be likable. He is so annoying, especially the first hour of this movie. My gosh, he Mike, is what he is, and he's great in ensemble.
Mike, if I was starting an action movie, I wouldn't want my leads to be a paleontologist and a mathematician, wouldn't you?
I mean, Sam Neill, I think he had a little bit more command. He was a little bit more likable than this guy was. I mean, the chemistry between him and Julianne Moore was zero, if not zilch. I mean, I could not picture them as boyfriend girlfriend the whole movie.
Julianne Moore is a great actress, but I think she was a little out of her lane in this movie. Some of the research I read, she only took this movie to she needed cash to pay off a divorce settlement. She's actually admitted this, so yeah, maybe she had.
Oh my gosh,
maybe different motivation. All right.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
So something.
Good. I'm glad. Good for her. Good for her. She's better. I hate the cliche.
Yeah.
They were better than the material,
Yeah.
but it fits for this one. Of course, you had the bring back the life will find a way. How many times I have to hear that in this movie? The ripples in the water. Okay, we get it. A T-Rex is coming. You don't need to keep continuing that trope. Let's see what else do I got here.
Yeah.
Vince Vaughn. I told you I'd come back to him. He is the villain in this movie. He switches out, Roland's
That might have saved some lives.
bullets, his cartridges, and it might have killed the T-Rex right then and there. The buck T-Rex would have been dead. Instead, what does he do? He switches it out for the paralyzing darts that help them bring back the male T-Rex to San Diego. And look what happens. You slimy eco-terrorist jerk.
Please continue, counsel.
And my last bit is it's a hollow movie. It's a cash grab, it's obviously, but when the villains are so two-dimensional and just honestly not a lot happens. I mean, true, they go to a lot of people die and stuff in the island, but some of the scenes are just overlong for the dramatic part of it. Well, I'm not going to say it. I guess this is the nostalgia part for me. Having seen the last Jurassic Park movie they had a couple of years ago, where again it's an evil nephew and he's trying to bring back a dinosaur to the mainland, and there's a corporation battling it out with our good guys, on the same island. I was like, oh my god, I've seen this movie twice now, and I cannot believe that trope was still used, but I can't believe it. So I don't know what I would have rated this movie in 97. Like I said, I don't remember it. I'm hoping to watch this movie way after today. Maybe, like I said, some of the visuals stunning, some of the acting pretty good. Everything else about it rotten. Why not have a real British guy be the villain? Why Arliss Howard, who's from like the Midwest of America? What's the point? Why? I mean, you got a good English guy being the Great White Hunter. You got Adam Attenborough. Why couldn't the main?
Okay, well,
okay,
maybe less French roast, like. Well,
maybe. I've really this of all the movies we've seen so far. This was the most visceral I felt after watching a movie. I really was just
a
little ticked off. At first, my mind wandered, like it usually does in these movies, to sequels, and wow, this might be a sequel on par, say, with I don't know,
Terminator 2.
Terminator 2. I'm going to say, Terminator 2 is better than Terminator. Maybe it's very close, but I was, I mean,
I want you to go.
Seeing red right now.
So I want you to go sit in the corner, take a breath,
step away from that.
But so I'll take the reins here, so you can kind of collect yourself, Mike. So as I mentioned, I saw this the first time. I was kind of jacked up, of course, and but I kind of came around to the same conclusion, Mike. I dipped a little bit. I probably gave this a 5 out of 5 my first view back 25 years ago, but on my second view. And again, I probably dipped down to like a 2.5. It's not a great movie by any means, but again, if you go into this movie looking for plot, you've gone the wrong way. And Roger Ebert made a great criticism of this movie. He says, this movie's fun to look at, but typically I don't admire movies where their plot summary can be summarized on the McDonald's collector's cups.
Yeah, like I said. Not a lot happens. It's just some of the scenes are just too overdrawn.
It might have been a great movie if Jurassic Park hadn't existed before it. I don't know, but again, it understood the assignment, Mike. It got right. There's like 48% more dinosaur footage than the previous one because people wanted to see it. I mean, it did what its audience. Yeah.
There's a reason you call it the dinosaur movie. I mean, other than Jurassic Park, I mean, how many people would know it had the tagline "Lost Kingdom"?
Right.
Not a lot of, there's been so Lost World. There we go. I'm messing up now.
I'm kind of like Mr. Hammond. I'm looking for redemption at the end of these things when we get too critical of them. Speaking of that, Richard Attenborough, who played Hammond, Goldblum there's a line in the movie where Goldblum goes, "Oh, you went from a capitalist to a naturalist, just like that in 4 years." And think that was an homage because his brother is David Attenborough, the naturalist. It's a weird trivia
Yeah,
thing
I
there.
thought so.
But again, the thing of these movies is the dinosaurs are more impressive than the people, and they always are, right? But there were elements of this thing where, as I mentioned, the plot holes and the some of the stuff's like shoehorned in, like her like gymnastics story where she did a gymnastics routine at the end of the why was that
Yes.
there? But this movie's still better than any of the latter Jurassic World movies, or even Jurassic Park 3. I think they spent a steady decline in these movies as they go. But
Yeah, when you said Jurassic Park 2, I had the people, I think, like Bill Macy and maybe Anne Heche. I had them in my head for this movie, but then I couldn't remember Jurassic. I couldn't remember the third one either.
Tail
So
Downey was
I saw it in the theater.
Jurassic Park 3. Yeah,
But-
yeah. See,
Hey, okay, thank you. So there you go. Wow, I messed up my
But
short-haired
I guess that's
actors.
kind of the point. If you don't remember them, they probably don't. They don't merit them. But
Yeah,
I'm at a
there you
different
go.
level than most because of my geekdom. So I kind of calculate and remember these things. But even I had some issues this one. But this is still a movie I watch in rotation. I mean, I'll have it on when I'm working or doing things in the background. It's just one of those movies that I do appreciate on a technical scale. At least I appreciate.
Really?
And I'm a Spielberg guy, even But again, it's not something that I choose to watch. It's just something that it's on. I won't turn the channel. But yeah,
Did he have anything
No,
to do with
not-
Jaws 2?
maybe produced. I don't know, but yeah, I don't
Okay.
think so. No, but
All right.
yeah. So there we go, Mike.
Okay.
Again, it's the concept of this show is to see what hits and what misses. But we're not critiquing these movies. We're critiquing how we feel about them. So Mike was more than clear about how he felt on this one. But yeah, but
I'm sorry, yeah.
that's what I
It's
like
not meant
about
for everyone.
doing the
Let's put
show
it
is that it gives us the opportunity to kind of revisit these things and see.
I feel like I blew my wad on the first movie, seeing the dinosaurs. Like, oh wow, there's dinosaurs.
Yeah.
After that, I want to
You-
see some drama. I want to see some good
Yeah.
acting and a storyline. Okay, dinosaurs. We get it. Dinosaurs. Yeah, yeah.
No.
Oh yeah, well, dinosaurs. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, bigger dinosaur. Ooh, megalodon. Ooh, an ectosaur, whatever the hell that last one
Yeah.
was that could fight
Yeah.
military. What the hell is that?
If you're curious, the novels might scratch that itch for you. The novels are really that. The novels are like, hey, you guys, you have really screwed up here, and now you're
Yeah.
going to seriously pay. And there's no levity in those novels. They're really kind of hardcore, and they're
Right.
really kind of horror novels, to be honest with you. But okay, well, that was a lot of fun, Mike. I didn't mean to get your goat there.
It's okay.
Well,
It's
I
not your
kinda feel
fault.
guilty
Let's put it that
suggesting
way.
This movie now, but wow. You want more?
No. I
Make it
want
hurt.
more.
Make it
Just
hurt. I
no
will.
Batman and Robin, please. No, yeah.
Well, all right. So that's we're kind of getting to the end there, guys. Just before we leave, we want to kind of revisit what we used to do in the past, and we kind of tell our audience what we as people are currently watching that aren't old movies. Right now, I'm getting excited. I'm going to start watching tonight the documentary Pistol on the FX network, which is a series dedicated to the beginning and the rise and fall of the Sex Pistols, Mike, by the Steve Jones. It's a Danny Boyle
Cool.
directed adventure, so that's got to be good. And it's by by adapted from the novel by Steve Jones, their guitarist. And I'm a huge punk rock aficionado. I love punk rock. I grew up with that, and I'm really excited about seeing that. So I would recommend for people to check out Pistol on the FX or streaming on Hulu. So very excited about that. Mike, you into anything new?
Nice. No, I was just gonna say I just watched a documentary about Sid Vicious, and it was kind of interesting. I'm a little bit opposite. I am still kind of holding on to my nostalgia. So kind of like last time when I recommended Darkman. This time I recommend Swingers. If nobody has seen that movie, it was kind of went under the radar when it came out in '96 or so, but it had Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn in it.
They sure
boy,
did.
those two guys take different paths. It's a really good movie, though. Of course, they made
Yep.
a sequel to it that sucks, so stay away from that one. But it was
I
Vince
gotta
Vaughn at
agree
his
with you
best. Let's put it
100%.
that way. So.
Vince Vaughn deserves the accolades he got in this movie because he played that role. That was one of the greatest performances that I've ever seen. He played that. Everybody knows that guy, especially if you grew up in that time like we did. You knew that guy. There was one of those overly cocky, confident ladies' man that just you hated their guts, but you still loved them. It's one of those things where he nailed that role. But yeah.
And one more movie I have from the past, Your Hunter from the Future. This is definitely for a niche audience. Anyone who knows Space Mutiny really well would enjoy this movie because you'll see some of the same sets, and here's the same actor, Red Brown, and then a little earlier role.
Wow, going into deep cuts.
Enjoy,
there, Mike. That's Red Brown, outstanding. Captain America, one of the first Captain Americas. Yeah. Okay, well, I think this show is about to become extinct. See what I did there, Mike? It's like I'm not a dad, but
it's like a campy or compy.
Horrible.
It was like
but again, we want to thank everybody for listening. And again, just to remind you that if you, Mike kind of talked about some engagement there. If you feel compelled to send us an email, we love to hear from you. You can reach us at nostalgicgrumps@gmail.com. Or if you're curious to see anything new or show updates or we've kind of increased our social media presence a little bit. I've been posting a lot more on our Instagram page that's at Grumpy Nostalgia on Instagram. We're putting some trailers and some video clips and some audio clips, stingers of what we listen to, what the shows are. You can sample it, send it to your friends, see what the show's like. We love to help spread the word and get this out to more people. But again, we want to thank everybody for listening again. So, Mike, that's going to wrap it up for me. You got anything you want to add?
Jim Cotta.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so again, thanks everybody for listening. We will see you again next time.